Hello, it's me, Andy from Blitz Gaming. Hope you're all having a great day. It's turned cold in the UK, a bit too cold. But it's rather that or be roasted, and I don't want to be roasted. We've got a review we put together, Alder Lake. I said I wasn't going to do Alder Lake, well not straight away. I'll change my mind. Really, I thought I'll get in there while we can, and while I can get a motherboard and chip. So we're going to be testing the i5 12600K with the Z690-Gaming-X DDR4 from Gigabyte. It's not an OS board, it's a standard Gigabyte board. It's heavy, it's a DDR4 version. I think if I said in my review, don't bother doing DDR5 because it's at this time it's slow, and really the amount of money you have to pay extra for it is not worth it. And I think when the next Intel chipset come out, is it Raptor Lake? I can't remember now. The next batch, which is due out basically second half of next year. DDR5 might be a bit better pricing, better speeds, and then we'll make a switch. But until then, we're staying with DDR4. So we're going to put 3,600 megahertz memory in here. See how it goes, and go from there. So it's got some stuff on here. I think the price of this was basically in UK around £200. So as obviously things vary. It's not the cheapest of the boards. I think the cheapest ones started around £180. And also they went up to what, silly money, which we're never ever going to touch. So just in case you're wondering, will I be getting something like is it a Tarchy board of, it's never going to happen, not as far as I'm concerned. It's an heavy board, it's quite heavy, and at the end of the day this is our first full ATX board we've tested. So in the box we've got the board, we have got two SATA cables, one with an L bracket or 90 degrees bracket. Oh look, Gigabyte are wasting bags again. Obviously don't realise about recycling these days. We have one M2 screw, another M2 screw, another M2 screw. So no standoff. We have a multilingual installation guide, how to install CPU, memory, GPU, power supply, the normal stuff. And yes, we have a manual. Oh, another screw. There's another screw, and it's not a standoff. So we've got 4 screws. So I'm not exactly what sure this comes with, being a Gigabyte board. Yeah, it probably comes with most of the stuff. We'll keep that out because we'll have to have a quick look through in a second, see what it comes with. Now when they were released, the day I could have bought any board under the sun. And I thought, no, I'm not going to buy a board. No, I'm going to wait. I'm not in no rush. And now I changed my mind. It's like it's not hardly any boards left. So a bit difficult to choose. So I mean, I just picked. Okay, I thought, well, I'll get a Gigabyte. The reason why I bought this one because it has the built-in backplate. For the price you have, where MSI and Asus, you had to put the backplate in, and I thought, well, I'd rather have that as one. I think it looks a lot better. It's a lot easier to install. at the end of the day. And it's also come with some nice big chunky heatsinks for the M2s. Okay, got some bits and bobs. Basically, no, the Ferro 5 review we did, I don't know, last week or the week before. This has a bracket already from day one for the LGA 1700. So that's a bonus. It's one of the few coolers what is available with the correct bracket from day one. So if I was going to buy one, LGA 1700 or Alder Lake, I have noticed that coolers are very much in very rare stock. Yeah, I'll make sure I get a cooler what fits, got the right bracket available before I buy this. Now I've noticed everyone saying, okay, it does work if you got it with the 1151 setup. It does, but when you look at the reviews, people have said, okay, yes, it can put it together, but it doesn't go down 100% smooth on the CPU, so you may get a bit tad too warm here and now. So you're better off paying for the bracket, because what you want to do, you spend £300 on a processor, £200 on a motherboard, don't have the right fan, you blow your processor up, you're not going to be happy. So if you have to wait, then wait. Now according to all the sites I've been to, Lian, Corner Master, Aerocool, all their processors, all their fans should be shipped from next month onwards with the right brackets. So basically, when you want one, make sure your retailer has gave you the correct bracket for LGA 1700. Right, let's go on. Yeah, you can see it's quite chunky at the end of the day. Right, let me just go through what I just got the details of. Right, phase wise, a 6+2. It's a 60 amp DOCTOMOS for the main board. It's a 60 amp for the GPU. It does make me wonder. It's like, how comes this board's got all the right data? Every other board I've looked at on Gigabyte's website doesn't have the right data for the phases. And it has a 70 amp setup for the CPU. Now, okay, now not about testing it. Now I'm never going to have a 12900K. I may have one the next setup. I can't say at this time, but I don't think I'll be buying a 12900K. Because it don't benefit me and it's extremely hot. So I'd rather wait for the next batch of CPUs to come out. But there is a lot of bummer boards that support 90 amp or 95. So how stable this board is going to be is another thing. Now we're putting the old 12600K in. Should be fine. You'll probably be fine with a 12700K. 12.9 being, if you've seen all the other benchmarks and reviews on the net, because it gets extremely hot. I probably won't pick this board by choice. Now, depends what you've got to spend to get 90 amp phases. We'll see. I mean, ideally, I would think you probably have to go up to. I'm pretty sure the Odyssey boards went up to around 250 at 90 amp, but don't quote me on that. I'll have to check. So yeah, so it's got 16+2 phases, 60 amp DOCTOMOS for the board, 60 amp for the GPU, and 70 amp for the CPU. got a 2.5 gig LAN. It's got a USB-C at the back. It's got 4 times M2 sockets. Run that PCI version 4. No PCI version 5. Now I think that's standard chipset because I've not seen any boards that seem to have PCI version 5 for any M2s. That has PCI 5 for the graphic card slot, but none for the M2s. I don't know why. That is beyond me. So as a Realtek ALC 12200 VB audio chip. Now I'm not really a sound person, so I couldn't say if that's a good chip or a bad chip. All I know is when I'm playing games, if it crackles, I get upset, and I've not had any crackle yet. So should be okay on that. So I've got 2 times addressable RGB, 2 times RGB, a flash button, which is good because at this moment in time there's what, only 6 SKUs or 8 SKUs CPUs, and when all the others turn up, I think in January, we're going to have to flash the BIOS. So it's good that we've got a Q flash. Yeah, otherwise we won't be getting any CPUs working. Now I did notice now, Gigabyte have released an F6A BIOS for this board. So that's F6A game mode. Now I presume that I've not looked it up, but I would have thought that fixes the game problem that Alder is having with games. Now I won't know until I've tested it. I will test, basically we're going to test Windows 11 and we will test probably at least 12 games. So we've got, as I said, 1 PCI Express 5 for the graphic card slot. It's got dual channel DDR4, 533 megahertz upwards. But to be honest with you, you probably won't go that high on DDR4. I think once you go over the 5,000 mark, if DDR5 is the right price and it's now got decent latency, you'll probably switch from DDR4 to DDR5. So we don't quite on that. They may really bring out some decent DDR4. So that's about it on the data I quickly wrote down. Let's have a look at what it's got. So from the top we have in dark grey again. I seem to have like this dark grey on black. It's a bit hard to see. So I've got addressable RGB and RGB. Then we got CPU fan and CPU option fan. Then big chunky heatsink for the MOSFETs. Then we got an 8-pin plus 4-pin for power. Yeah. We got the new socket in the middle, which is on our funny oblong shape. 4 DDR DIMM sockets. Turn around on the back, we have 4 USB 2 sockets. Oh look, it's up to date. There's no PS2. Isn't that great? There's no VGA as well. Double bonus. I've been saying for years, we don't want them. They must have heard me. Next to that, we have USB 3.2 times 2. And one of them is for the BIOS, for flashing. Then we've got display port, HDMI port, USB Type C, USB Type 3.2, which is generation 1, 2 red ones are generation 3, that's what generation 2, and the blue one is generation 1. And from there we got 2 more 3.2 generation 1 USBs, and then 2.5 gig LAN. So we've got 3 USB 3.2 generation 1, USB-C, 2 USB 3.2 generation 2, 4 USB times 2, sockets. On the right hand side we have a sniff out, microphone and line out. So that's quite different. They've now, well obviously I take it the sound chip now, when you plug in your line, it knows what you're going to put in there. So there's no front speakers, back speakers, side speakers, it's just one input. I'm not sure how that works. They might say, well, you got to plug it into an external sound box. I don't know. I've never tried actually. Then we got, okay, at the bottom, one audio header. That's a 2-pin LED demo thing now, double A's. Then you got the RGB, just for RGB, then the standard RGB. Then you got the Thunderbolt header. USB 2, USB 2, so you've got two USB 2 headers, a flash reset button. Oh, we've got loads of fan headers here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fan headers. So you've got plenty of fan headers. So 4 system fan headers altogether, a CPU and an option CPU, so that's 6 fan headers altogether. Then you got the front panel header. So your reset switch, power switch, and your LED lights. So there's another button there. Is that some sort of? There's another reset switch. What was that one? Reset switch. I don't know. One's a flash switch. They got, oh, so you got the flash button, and you got a reset switch on the board as well. It's a bonus. So you're pressing the button on your case. Well, so if you've got an open bench at the end of the day, you can just press the reset switch without using the jumpers. That's okay. That's an added bonus, can't complain with that. And from there we got a USB-C header, then a USB 3.2 header, then a 24-pin power supply. So we got N2, there's 4 of them all together. So there's I think 2 there, 1 there, 2 at the bottom, and the 1 there. So we got PCXY5 is got an armoured plating on it, and the 2 sockets at the bottom. We've got 2 full length PCI Express 4 sockets at the bottom. So not bad at all. Can't see any defects on the back of the board. Looks alright. It's got a tiny little plate on the back for the CPU. I can't see anything what lights up. There might be, but I can't see anything what lights up. It's not an Aorus board, so I don't know if the standard Gigabyte boards don't light up, but I don't see no lights on here. At the end of the day, there may be, but I can't see any lights anywhere what will light up. So it's not a bad board. It's heavy at the end of the day, and as I said, we will be putting in there the 12600K CPU with a FR5 fan. Yeah, so we should test it. Now I don't know if you've seen my last view on the Gigabyte board. We will test these heatsinks for temperatures, see how hot they get. Because we've got an infrared gun now. So I've been trying to get my hands on for ages, but I've now got an infrared gun. So I can see what the temperature of these got up. When we're done with level 400F, we run Cinebench for an hour, and these heat sinks got up between 35 and 45C, if I remember rightly. So it'd be nice to see what this gets up to, temperature wise. as well as the fan. So yeah, it's a good board at the end of the day, and we go by that. But I hope you enjoyed the review. Now what I've got to do is benchmark it. As on this particular setup, we would, as I said, because we're doing Windows 11, we would do at least 12 games plus the thermals testing, and obviously things like Cinebench and Blender, the normal stuff. So it'll be a big all-out benchmark test on Alder because it's a new platform. Okay, I'll see you at the end and we'll have a natter, see what we think. So there's our board. I have taken the heatsinks off the M2s and got 3 pads underneath. I think I just dropped a screw. And got the one on there on its own, close to the CPU. Also got a pad. Now where did that screw go? There it is. Don't want that running around, causing a short or worse, blowing the board up. So we've got our new socket. So this is LGA 1700. Now I've not really looked at this, so it's completely new to me. So let me see what the difference is between. Oh, that's stiff. That is one stiff leaking up clamp that. Oh, so this is now back to front. It used to open that way. Alright, fair enough. Now if I look at the socket, I don't know if you can see in there. Could you give a zoom in? Now you got the tabs used to be on the left and right side. Now you've got tab 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and they're slightly one-sided. So that means there must be 2 notches, or 4 notches on the CPU. There's the processor. Don't know if you can see the notches on there, but there's 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, and you can see they're one-sided. There is a triangle on the bottom left, so it will go there. So in this case, this CPU goes in that way. He hopes. That's fine. So we push that back down. Oh, I don't go all the way down. Well, that comes piling off. That ain't off tight. Let me bring this extremely stiff clamp down. And there we go. I have to say that it's definitely stiff. You want to make sure that it's definitely under there. That will big fly up. So I'll now process it instead of being square, so an oblong. So let's get the old thermal paste on there. Now before we do that, we need to get the clamp. So we're using the Ferro 5 CPU cooler because it works with LGA 1700 out of the box. Yeah, it's a new model they brought out. I don't know if they brought it out for the 1700, but it's a new model, and from day one it supports the 1700 socket. Now I've just looked on their website. They've updated their video and their manual online. The manual in the box is out of date. But to go back to my other video, we had this clamp, and on when we done the 1200, you got these letters. A and B had to be on show. For 1700, you have to have A, B, and C on show. I don't know if you can see on there, but there is literally 3 letters. That show up? Probably not. But yeah, so there's 3 letters. Well, it's actually A, B, C, and D. But you want A, B, and C on show, and that basically determines how far you push this bracket in. And then now we've actually adjusted all this already. That should actually fit in the holes at the back. There you he says. We got a certain way around. If I remember rightly, it's not the world's greatest fit. So I just need to line that up there. We get the same screws as before. These are black rubber standoffs sort of things. I'll get a couple of these in place. Sign it up. Yeah, they ain't, the way they've designed it, they don't actually come through the holes. They sort of like stay the other side. Bit awkward really, because that means you've got to try and hold it in position. So yeah, I wouldn't try. Now I know there's a lot of videos out there saying it's the same as I think 1151, but it isn't, and I think that is one of the reasons why there's a lot of overheating. Because I can't remember what site it was, but one of the sites I went to, done a thermal diagram where they've used a cooler, 1151 cooler. And it's not sitting flush, it's sort of like all over the place. It feels okay, but it's not okay. So, but as I said, this one out of the box works fine. Let's check this. It's not loose or anyway. That's fine. Get our thermal placed on. Again, we're using the MX5. I'll probably go back to the Arctic Silver. Even though this actually comes out cooler, I find it, for my liking, I find it a bit runny. So now we've got an oblong socket. We can't just put a blob in the middle, it's no longer square. So we do that, nice cross, that should be enough, in theory. So we get the cooler. Can't do that yet, but we've got the paste on. We need the bracket. I think it goes up that way. Sure it goes that way up. Well, there we go, like that. And got to make sure we go the right way round. The fan is going from right to left, and so we want this bracket around that way. Now I'll let you know. On their website, Feather's website, I think it's got like 8 or 9 motherboards for LGA 1700. Mainly, I think like 6 of them from Asus, 2 from Gigabyte, where this bracket won't fit. Now, if you look at it like that, it's right up against the heatsink. They're saying the heatsinks on the motherboard are too big, and you can't get this to fit. So look at their website. Well, actually, I'll put it up on the list here when I finish the video. Which ones don't work. So right now the S goes, doesn't matter what way the S goes. Oops. You're supposed to tighten the bracket up first before putting the CPU cooler on. Jumping ahead of myself. Don't forget, when you tighten up the bracket, do it at an angle, diamond pattern, so it comes down evenly. Make sure it's nice and square tightly, and when you put the CPU on the top, doing one by one,
Don't tighten up one completely. Do them slowly and make sure it's finished off nice and tight, but not over tight, because you don't want it to sit one-sided. Yeah, the problem is there's a lot of people that they end up tightening one side up, and then all the paste you just pour on, all the thermal paste you've added to the chip, it all squirts out one side and it doesn't go on the CPU evenly. So you need to tighten up the CPU, fan and the brackets evenly so it comes down nice and square. Just as to remind you, the 12.6, 12.7, 12.900Ks, or any of the SKUs, what they've released so far, do not come with a fan. You've got to buy a fan. And when you buy a fan, whatever you do, make sure it comes with the 1700 bracket. Just in case you're wondering, I'm not going to fit the M2 heatsink back on over me M2 drive. The reason being that I'll sell these motherboards afterwards, and I don't want to take the sticky pad off. So I want to make sure it's all in perfect condition when it goes to be sold. Okay, there's the system specs. Just to let you know, we never turned off any E-cores or played around with the P-cores or used Gigabyte software to make games work. My attitude is, while they work the way they're supposed to work with the processor and Windows 11, or they don't work at all. That's my attitude. So we'll go through the games, what first don't work, in a second. If you're a Ubisoft fan, you're in trouble. Far Cry 6, even though it kept staying at 60 frames a second, regardless of resolution or setup. Division 2, well, I had one run it all, just black screen and froze, so you have to reset your PC. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, well, all that did was crash, and it basically got on my nerves. So I didn't bother testing it. Even though I did get it to run a couple of times, but it literally crashed more times than it ran. Time Spy and PCmark, even though they ran, I usually show graphs at the end, like temperature, what your frame rate and all that stuff is, and they never come up. So I never got no data on those, so I don't know how accurate those two tests are. So we'll just take it. They may be working, maybe not working. But obviously we use AMD graphic cards and Intel's IGP. Now, okay, I wanted to test an NVIDIA 1030, but it has not turned up yet, and I'm still waiting. I don't know when it's going to come. The courier said it, well, when it gets delivered, it gets delivered. So I can't test if it's an AMD graphic card problem or not, but I have tested the bugs on Windows 10, and Windows 10 works fine, but not with Alder Lake. Okay, synthetic benchmarks. Now you can see by the Cinebench score, it is rocket speed. I mean, it literally flies. Now, if I remember rightly, on the 11400F, it kept what we're doing, 10,300, something like that. 11,000 at best, if you got lucky, if you was overclocking. But I mean, if you did lose 11,000, you're still way short. This is doing 17,000 benchmarks. I mean, it flies. And the overall motherboard, we're using less watts than the bazooka we tested, so that's good. I've also included 2 games on here, Red Dead and Battlefield 5 with the RGP. You've got to remember we're doing the processor test. I'm not done it with the graphic card RX6600. And it's doing basically on Battlefield, doing about 105 watts tops and about 70-80 watts on Red Dead. So yeah, it's a good processor. It's all round. The only bad thing about it, with Windows 11 and obviously being a new platform, it's got teething problems. Now I would recommend at this time not buying it. Yeah, simply because it's got problems. Now I will do all these tests again with this chip on Windows 10. Hopefully you can get it up and running by Christmas. But just to see how bad Windows 11, if it's a Windows 11 thing or an Alder thing. Okay, ATS or American Truck Simulator. Yes, I'm testing it, and you're probably asking why. Well, I play it on the channel, so I want to give someone an idea what Intel's IGP's like, plus the CPU. I mean, it can be demanding if you've got all things turned on, and the scale turned up. It can be quite demanding. I mean, it plays fine. I mean, don't really see anything bad about it. I mean, we are on low settings. It's still at 1080p. Okay, it's not as good as AMD's IGP on the 5600X or 700X. So, yeah, I mean, it's quite a way down from the AMD IGP, but at the end of the day, it works. And if you want to play this type of game, yeah, you can save yourself £100, £120 buying a graphic card. So now I've switched over to the RX550. So I'm now on the Radeon graphics. We're at 1080p. It looks really good. Can't complain too much. We're on medium settings. Again, except obviously we've gone from 720p to 1080p. So you can see it's obviously a lot crispier than what it was before. Okay, the trees look a bit funny because we're only on medium settings and the shadows and all that are really missing. Otherwise, it's playable. And you've got to remember the RX550 is a budget card. Okay, it's still overpriced to what it should be. But you should be able to pick one up, well, normally around the £80 mark. But if you can get one of them now around the £80 mark, you've done well. Yeah, so the Intel IGP, it played, like I said, it played well on there, even though it wasn't in 1080p, but it was doing 60 frames a second. I did try to go up a bit more, and it really then struggled. It literally, one setting up was struggling. So now that we're on the RX550, we're on the 70 frames a second, so we've got more frames, better textures and so on. So no complaints there. So now still on the RX550, but now we're on high settings with 125% scale. So now it's starting to look like the game's supposed to be. Nice and crisp. At the end of the day, nice dark shadows where you need to have shadows. It's still playing well. We're in the 40s. Can't complain at all. So like I said, at the end of the day, if it's a game you like playing, you don't need to spend loads of money on a setup to play this game.
Time to hit the road.
So now we're on the RX6600 and we are now maxed everything. We are now basically 400% scale. So basically it's like playing now in 4K really. I mean it looks great, can't complain at all. This is how I play usually. And you can see it's way upmarket to what it was a minute ago. And we got great frames. I mean, when you look at it, we're still doing 80 frames. Now you might think, well, this is not like a benchmarking game, but it does have a massive area, a lot of cars going around, and yes, it's got a lot of light, glitches and so and so. So it can be demanding when it needs to be. Like I said, we've gone up to 400% scale. Now, if I left it on 125%, we'll be well over the 150 mark. So, it's the way the game is. So, we've got a chart. You can see the RX6600 walks it. Even with all the settings turned on, it has no problem running this game. As I said, well, actually, I made a mistake. Actually, the RGP was actually in 1080p, so it's another bonus for that. But it's a long way off of the RX550, and it's still slower, quite a bit slower than AMD's built-in RGP running on the 5600G. So, as always though, the game is well playable. If you like trucking or simulating games, driving games, not racing games, and like to have a good relaxing game, see a nice bit of scenery, this is the game for you. Or its brother, Euro Truck Simulator. Star Trek Online. People saying the same thing again. Why? Again, it's on my channel. And on top of that, Star Trek is actually a really demanding game, believe it or not. Not as the background, it's in the effects are really mind-blowing. I mean, every ship has got loads and loads of effects. It's madness. But obviously we're getting internet lag and obviously internet lag, network lag, obviously lag from the other players. You get all that, and you get quite often on Star Trek, I have to say. But again, this is on the IGP. No, it's not very optimised. Definitely not for Star Trek. We're doing what, 34 frames and 13 frames down in the 1% low. Now this is probably the most demanding mission they've got in the game, by the way. It's a new mission. It's just finished, I think. But while it was actually up and running, we thought we can use this because there's so much shooting going on, constant shooting. Now I've gone up to 1080p. You see how far we can take the old IGP. And you can see she's on a struggle now. We're in the 30s and we're quite low really. And I don't know, it was noticeable on 1080p and 720p. It did freeze. It was nasty, and certain things didn't render. Believe it or not, running around, not in this map, but actually running around Starfleet. So now we maxed out the sliders because we're on the RX550, still at 1080p, and well, we're doing pretty good now. Can't complain too much. It's playing well as it could be. Obviously, the RX6600 is going to walk it. It's just the way that is. But I'm just saying at the end of the day, the RX550, and you may get away with AMD's built-in IGP on the 5600G. Because I think that probably be about 5-10 frames at worst case scenario lower than what we got now. But the obviously Intel IGP is not optimised, and it in some games it was a nightmare, to be honest with you. So you can see there's plenty of effects going on. In some places it's like, well, it's just too much going on. Just found out my last run on Star Trek on that mission was corrupt. So I'm now fighting CC, Crystal Entity, which is, again, it can be quite busy. So it's not that bad, really. We won't be too much difference. Yeah, you're talking about 1.5 minutes of pure hell fighting CC, as it don't last that long these days. But again, it can be demanding for that period of time. So we've got an average of 75 and 1% low, 42. So it's still biggie. Okay, we've got the chart. Again, I wouldn't recommend playing it on Intel's IGP. It's all over the place. You can see the difference between 1080p and 720p. There's not much difference in the frame rate, but it was extremely freezing and lagging everywhere. RX550 had no problem playing the game with the sliders maxed out, and obviously the RX6600, well, we just walked it because it's like a 5 times faster card, so not a problem at all. Again, I wish I had the NVIDIA card test, but it hasn't turned up at the end of the day. Planet Coaster. This game is demanding, believe it or not. We're on the Intel IGP. It's a game that works. Can't complain. We're in 720p and we're on the lowest settings. And you can see the frame rate is basically, it's already died before we even start. We're just under 2,000 people at the end of the day. So again, they may optimise it a bit more, but I don't see anything coming out of this game. Usually as soon as you hit 8,000 people, the game dies anyway. But we go through the stages of the graphic cards and see what it looks like. We'll start off with the coaster drop. Now I've switched over to the RX550, still on lowest settings. You can see it's got a way better frame rate than the IGP. Still got those shadows turned on, no nothing like that. We're still just running on the basics, but it's running well. Still on low settings, but now we've switched over to 1080p. So it's getting a bit sharper. But again, there's no shadows turned on yet. Not real shadows. When we start turning the shadows on, it has a big change. Still at 1080p and lower settings, but now we've switched over to the RX6600. And you can see the frame rates are now shot right to the top. And I think every time we go up a notch, it loses about between 10 to 15 frames. I missed out low, went straight to medium settings, and you can see now the shadows and the lighting effects are now coming in, and the frame rate is obviously now dropping. But we're still getting good frame rate, average just under 100 at the end of the day, so And you can see it now, a nice screenshot with the shadows turned on. Makes a big difference, but obviously we've only got 2,000 people. Now let's look at the coaster in medium settings. So now we've got everything turned on. So we're in ultra. You can see the frame rates now in the 50s. Again, don't forget we've only got 2,000 people. You can see the walkway now with a lot more prominent shadows, light effects. Now when we go to Planet Zoo is a lot stronger on light effects than this game. So you can see the old chair swing. At the end of the day, you can see the shadows now and everything under the sun. But when you're actually on the rides, you actually get a pretty good frame rate. The frame rate does go up quite a bit. It's only when you're watching it in total. Okay, I know you're all dying to get on the coaster at full spec. Let's have a look then. So, Planet Coaster plays well, even played on the IGP, like I said, but it was on a low and not very good. I mean, you may be okay on a campaign. The campaign usually doesn't really have that many people, probably 3,000 tops. It's only when you want to do sandbox stuff, when you build a massive park and you get up to the 8,000 people, and basically your park dies. Now I'm building a new park and I will test it soon, see if I can get past the 8,000 with my Horizon and my Odyssey 3080. Otherwise it plays okay. The frame rates were certainly playable, so it's definitely on the 550 upwards. But again, as I said, all gets affected by the more and more people you bring into the park. It all changes. Battlefield 5. No, I'm not doing 2042. There's no campaign. And I think anyway, your IGP will blow up. So let's quickly look at the settings before we start making a move. Basically, advanced settings will stay the same. And basically, we just change the global settings down the bottom, so it goes medium, high, ultra, or whatever it is. Settings, and everything else stays the same. So we're at 720p medium on the IGP. I mean, done well. I think Intel's made sure it works. It's one of those games people play. And I said I think Intel did put the effort into it to make sure it stays in a playable state. Again, on the menu system where you have the music playing, all the music crackled and done all sorts of garbly stuff. Like I said, it seems to disappear when you play the games. Yeah, mind you, that might be because you've got so much action going on, you might not hear it on certain sounds.
Wir brechen durch.
Mir gefällt das nicht. Sei stark, Handmann. Verfolg einfach deine Ziele.
we switched over to the RX550 on 1080p, low settings. So we've still got a decent frame rate, still over the 30s, even though we've now gone to low settings. But us being, I think, the same with all the testing we've done on all the CPUs we've done so far.
Ziel vor! Ziel bewegt sich noch! Der macht keinen Mucks mehr! Panzer zerstört! Gute Arbeit! Wir sind noch nicht fertig.
Now we're running the RX6600, 1080p, low settings again, bit from the start, and we go all the way up to ultra, bit by bit. So obviously it's going to run fine with this in. It's good to see, because obviously most people will still play with low settings on multiplayer for competitiveness, so I always put this on there, the low level stuff, just to show you okay what it's going to look like. Now we've got no RX shadows on, nothing like that. Reason being because we've got an AMD card, not a Nvidia graphic card. If graphic cards weren't so expensive, I would have bought an Nvidia graphic card for comparing, but there's silly amounts of money and there's only so much money I've got. I can't go out and buy graphic cards like galore, and I don't get any sent for me for free. So you just have to go by the way things are. We see we've got stuck. Now I switch over to medium settings, and you can see straight away it's gone up in quality. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, even low quality, it still looks great. I mean, it's not a game you're going to complain about. That's a dead cert. But unless you're playing 2042, then you got every reason to complain. Let's blow up these Shermans, then get around the corner.
Und helfen Sie der Infanterie! Sie haben es gehört, Cats. Vorrücken! Ja, Kommandant! Weiter auf der Straße! Zerstören wir ihre Verteidigungen! Die Amerikaner laufen davon! Stefan hat ihn nice gemacht, hä?
So now we're on high settings, and frame rate is still good. Still up there on the hundreds. I can't remember what we got on the 11400F with this graphic card, but that was on Windows 10, so it's not really a comparison, really. But this is one of the games where, okay, game plays well. It doesn't have no real problems, but I did say it had a sound problem on the menus like every other game. Ultra settings, and we've probably lost a slot. 10 frames, we've gone down a bit. Still got plenty of action going on, no problem. No stuttering. I don't remember the game freezing at all.
Eindruckswert.
So we're now at the chart breakdown. Intel's IGP, it does well. I think this was one of the games, as I said earlier, it's optimised for the IGP. We run that 720p on medium settings, and it's doing the 30s. It does drop into the 20s on the 1% low. Now I'm not done it in 1080p because it's just going to die. Now you could lower the settings and it'll probably get you a few frame rate boosts. I think I did try it and I didn't see much difference. RX550, 1080p low, it does well. Again, we ain't done it in 720p. It's like, well, it survives enough at 1080p, it does well. I mean, you could always put it in 720p and it will go quicker. Now the RX6600, you can see that has no problem at all. Right up to Ultra. And in Ultra we're doing 90 frames and dropping down to the 50s for the 1% low. Now I need to compare it with obviously the 11400 to find out what the difference is. But I would have to wait until I switch over to Windows 11. CSGO, I mean all I do is really just change the 4 top settings. Everything down below I don't touch. It's just basically where you got shader, settings, effects, textures and all that stuff, and global. We just change those settings, go through the settings from basically low to high or whatever, low to ultra, whatever it may be, and then we play. I don't do a chart for this because I think it's pointless because the frame rate's all over the place because it's an online game. You get lag, input lag, you name it, lag. So yeah, so this is the IGP 770. Now I'll let you know it throws galore. Yeah, it stuttered, throws, sound problems, you name it, playing a game. The sound problems weren't just in the menu, there was also sound problems playing a game. And in some cases, it never even rendered, it just come out black. So, and I thought, I can't play this, it was just a nightmare. So yeah, the frame rate is doing, well you see there we're on the open on our own. We're doing 100 frames a second and 1% low is 35. And you can see where it's dropped, a real spike there, down to 5 frames. So the game is really, really a pain to play on the IGP at this moment in time. Switch over to 1080p, you can see the frame rate's low, averaged in the 40s, 50s. 1% low is like dropped. I mean, this is where it was even worse than before. Lots of stuttering, freezing, nightmare to play. And again, even at 1080p, we were getting black screen. When I mean black screen, the whole screen wasn't black. It just, all the objects were black. Yeah, it just didn't render items correctly. We'll switch over to the RX550. We're on 1080p, lowest settings. To be honest, most people are going to play at low settings just because it's a competitive game. And on top of that, you don't really notice the graphics change anyway. But yeah, you can still see we've got a good average, 90 frames, and the 1% low is still big drops. But I think it has the same problem when we was on 11400F, except it wasn't freezing. And didn't have the sound problems. But again, that could just go down to Windows 11 or Alder Lake. I don't know. We know there's a game problems at the end of the day. So now on the RX6600, with those two cards from AMD, we had no rendering bugs. But there was still freezing. It didn't go away, the freezing. Now, if I was a person who was saying to myself, well, I'm going to buy Alder Lake to play this game, I wouldn't bother. At this moment in time, it runs crap. At the end of the day, I mean, it really, and being competitive games where you need to shoot, you got to shoot someone, and you freeze, you die, it's a pain in the backside. It ain't no good at all. But frame rate wise, we're at this moment in time, we are on the max settings. So we've, I missed out the high settings. I thought we'd just go straight to max. You can see we're running around in the 300 odds, and you can go by the 1% low. You can see big drops. It's just the way the game plays. It just well, it's worse than what it should be. Now you can see where we're all bunched up. The frame rate has gone down by what, at least 100 frames to a degree. And as soon as you obviously split up, obviously your frame rate goes up. This is the reason why I don't do charts, because it's like, I can't put on there, yeah, you do 300 frames a second, and you go and build your system. You thought, well, no, I'm only doing 200. Yeah, but it varies where you're on the map. It's very inconsistent game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the only game I got to work properly. No crashing, no black screen, no nothing from Ubisoft. And I'll let you know there's another new version of MSI Afterburner, which has got loads and loads of new things added to it, which I can only presume is down to Alder Lake. So the frame rate on, because we're running on the RGP 770 at 720p. You can see it's struggling on this. I mean, we are on 720p on lowest settings. Okay, you can turn down the scale resolution to improve it, but it's like, well, it's not optimized, and that's just life. So now we switch over to the RX550. Again, still at 720p, low settings, so to match the settings of the RGP. And you can see we have really no problem playing with the RX550, but the RX550 is a lot more powerful than the RGP. It's just the RGP, well, yeah, not been able to Intel, but if you're going to make an RGP, at least make it competitive with AMD's version. I mean, I wouldn't say AMD's RGP is brilliant, but it's way better than what you've got, and at least I can play at 1080p or 720p, usually medium to high settings, on literally everything I've got. Now on the RX6600 at 1080p, running low settings, you can see we have no problem running at all. You still get the 1% low drop, but I can't compare that to the 11400 until I've done a test. Yeah, it plays well, as I thought. I don't think you struggle at all playing this game. It just runs fine, straight out of the box. For some bizarre reason, the game decided to have a weather change at this time. It's never done it before on this, when I've done this benchmark. But I thought I'll leave it in there because it's raining as well, and obviously the shadows change. But we're on 1080p, a bit higher presets this time, and you can see the frame rate is still doing extremely well. No problem at all running the game. So now we're running ultra settings, still with the cloudy sky. You can see that the frame rate is not struggling at all. We were still in the 60s, 70s at the end of the day. And the 1% low is in the 60s as well. So we've got a good average frame rate across the board. Okay, the breakdown chart. The whole Intel RGP. It's too slow to play this game. I mean, you could lower the scale. We've got to remember we're at 100% scale, like all our games we play. RX550 had the same setup, come out the same if it was on Windows 10, so that's good. And obviously the RX6600 has no problem playing at all on any settings, so we can't complain there. Getting on Ultra 1080p, doing in the 60s, so that was great. Can't complain at all. Okay, Far Cry 6. Now we're on the RX550 at 720p, and we're doing what? Average 50 and 1% low down at the 40s. Now Intel's RGP refused to render. It basically looked like the GPU, like it was basically exploded on the screen. It basically was not going to happen. Now I'll show you the bug, what's in Farcry. The frame rate's stuck at 60 frames. It's like having sync on. Basically, you ain't going nowhere. I've tried all the settings under the sun, changed them, changed lower resolution. It don't matter what I changed, you can see that it's low resolution at the end of the day. Now I did quickly test it on Windows 10, and Windows 10 had no problem. So it's either Windows 11 or it's an Alder Lake problem. But you can see we just would not go over a 60 frame rate limit. And yes, the limit was turned off. We checked it, made sure it was off, everything was off. Does not make no difference at all. So I won't do a chart for this. Basically, it crashed. As I said in the beginning, it does not work correctly. So GTA, we're using basic settings. Got no FXAA on or MSA. All we've done is turn these shadows on and all these features on. That's about it. So Intel's IGP 720p runs well at the end of the day. Okay, rather than 720p, but it's not struggling, run fine, no problem at all. We'll switch over to the RX550, same settings at 720p. Yeah, the frame rate's slightly up. There's not a lot in it between this and the Intel IGP. I don't know if you noticed that was a colour palette change between the two graphic cards.
My new website covers all three of my careers. Huh.
Now running 1080p on the IGP. So Intel's still doing pretty good. So we can't complain, it's doing well at 1080p. Still got a good frame rate, averaging 50s, 1% lows down to the 20s. Okay, I switched back to the RX550. Again, extremely similar in frame rate. In fact, I reckon the Intel IGP has a probably upper hand at this moment in time. So now we've got the 6600. We're still running DirectX 10 at 1080p. We have turned the FXAA on this time just to see how much of it's dropped. Because when we switched FXAA on the other two, on the other card and on the IGP, basically the graphics frame rate just died, so it's pointless. But obviously we can see it on here. It's not a problem at all running on this card. I have not touched any other settings. I'm still on basic shadows and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't worth, because I'm not comparing one card to another card directly. It's just left it as it is, really. So we've got the chart up. You can see there, basically the IGP and the RX550, they trade blows. I mean, they're very, very similar to each other. But as I mentioned, the palette changed. It was a lot more vibrant on the RX AMD graphics than what it was on the Intel. Otherwise, things are fine. Can't complain. As I said earlier, we're not comparing one graphic card to the next, which is the fastest of so and so, because I don't have enough graphic cards. I don't have another graphic card going against the RX6600, and as I said earlier, the Nvidia 1030 has still not turned up, and even when it does turn up, it's still not going to be the perfect competitors, because one's got 2 gig and the other one's got 4 gig of memory, so it's a bit both ways really. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is the settings. we change all the settings on the right hand side to low. Then we go medium, high, ultra. We don't use the presets. We're just using everything low or everything high. So Intel's RGB 720p. We're running out, and we're on obviously low settings. Now we're on the bare minimum. Again, you could probably change the scaling resolution if you wanted to. But depends what you want. I mean, at the end of the day, I wouldn't go any lower than this. And we are pushing the integrated graphics to its limit.
Down for sure.
It does have these little micro freezes. I'll let you know, it ain't the perfect thing at all. Switch over to the RX550, again at 720p, low settings. You can see the frame rate's gone up by 15 or so frames over the RGB. Okay, the daylight's also come up a little bit. There's nothing I can do about that. I have no control. I could turn it on, load up the save game. 1 minute the sun will be out, next minute it'll be low, it'll be whatever, raining, whatever. I have no control of that at all. Switch over to the RX6600, and you can see the game is still in low settings and 720p, but you can see the frame rates now like gone way up into the hundreds. So yeah, average 110 frames, 1% load in the 90s, so it's playing well, can't complain. Now we switch to 1080p, still on low settings, and we're still getting 100 frames a second and a 1% low in the 80s, so we ain't really lost anything from 720p. Runs fine, can't complain, and it's a lot crisper and sharper now, just going to 1080p. Now we're in 1080p, medium settings, and you can see it's now looking great. It's nice and crisp and sharp, and the shadows and all that is looking good. Get nice blacks, making everything look nice now. Can't complain at all. And we're still getting a good average, still doing 100 frames a second, still in the 80s for the 1% low. Now we've gone to high settings and all the stuff, and you can see the frame rate now is starting to drop. We've gone down, what, 25 frames, but average, what, still doing 77, 80, 1% low in the 60s, so can't complain too much. It's still running well. You've got to remember this is in can't remember now, Valentine. It's not the city, but I have got the built-in benchmark for the city at the end. Now we switch up to Ultra. It's hard to see what the differences are. I mean, you could be, I mean, you notice them if you zoomed in, but I mean, for the basic person running around shooting that, you're not going to really notice that much. If you went to 4K or even 1440p, you certainly notice a lot easier. But it does look nice. I can't complain. At 1080p, it does well. And we're still doing in the 50s, average 50, 1% low in the 40s. So it can still play quite handsomely. You could tweak the settings a bit to get up to 60 frames again here and there. We finish off with a built-in benchmark. There's not a lot of difference in it. Still in the 50s. Again, you might want to set up so you get a 60 frames a second. Minimum, give it a bit of tweak here and there. But it plays fine, it looks fine. It's a great game. Unfortunately, I ain't got that far in it. I just don't have time to play it. But it does look nice. Really can't complain at all. So Red Dead, we look at a chart. Again, it was struggling at 25 frames a second. The RGP, Intel's RGP. But no, it's got to start somewhere, I suppose. Again, you could probably lower the resolution even more if you wanted to. That's entirely up to you. So RX550, I mean, that was playable, no problem. And that's a similar frame rate to what it was on the 11400F. And obviously we've got the RX6600, where it has no problem running at all. Even right up to ultra settings. No problem. We're doing what, 50 frames, 42 at the 1% low. You can tweak it to get it over 60 frames. I mean, there's a lot of settings on there you can change. I don't use the presets because I found in the past, for some odd reason, the higher settings sometimes come out faster than the lower setting, the way it sets things up. So that's the reason why I use all the settings on the right hand side and do it manually. Shadow of War. I love this game, I really do. So we're on Intel's IGP. It runs fine. 1080p, lowest settings going. It does struggle, but to be honest, I couldn't actually notice it on the screen too much. So it does make me wonder. Now I know there's another new version of MSI Afterburner come out on top of the one which just came out a week ago, with the review tuner. So it does make me wonder: is it giving it a correct frame rate? Switch over to the RX550. Again, we'll run about 15 frames faster. Game, we've got no problems running. I don't remember it being any sound problems in this game either, like we've had in the others. It's one of those games that seem to run perfectly out of the box. No problem. So yeah, so we've got good frame rates. 40 frames and 1% low on the RX550, which I think was similar to the 11400. We switch over to the RX6600 and you can see the frame rates now turboed up on the low settings. So still 1080p but low settings. I mean, the game looks great at low settings. I'm not saying it don't. But it does look a lot better when it's on ultra, I have to say. But I wouldn't complain. It's not a game I would complain about graphics being rubbish. And like we're well into the 200s at the end of the day, and 1% low, what, just 190. So no problem where the RX6600 is going to struggle. Now on the medium preset, still 1080p, and we're still well up to nearly just under the 200 barrier. So we've got 170s, and what's it, 1% low is 137. So again, no struggles at all with this game. I might actually get around to finishing one day. I'm just too busy beating things up all day long.
I wonder what happens when your head falls off. Wait, what was that?
Staying on the high settings, no problem, running around still got great frame rate, 125, 130, basically 1% low, 109. So again, it's no struggle at all, and it looks great at the end of the day. yeah, as I said earlier, I'm too busy just go around beating things up. Can't be asked to play the game properly. So now on the Ultra preset. I mean, it does look nice now. Can't complain. Still got a great frame rate. Still in the hundreds, and 78 as 1% low. So yeah, fantastic game. I do suggest if anyone loves running around having a good fight and beating things up constantly, this is the game to play. I mean, it's similar to Assassin's Creed, but this has got a lot better fluent fighting at the end of the day than Assassin's Creed. And that explosion is from the damn dragon that keeps flying around, which I couldn't work out what it was, but there is a dragon flying around blowing me up. Okay, let's look at the breakdown chart. As again, it's a game. I never noticed any bugs in the game at all. No freezing, no sound problems, no nothing really. Seen it work first time out of the box. Okay, Intel's RGB, it run, but you're probably better off trying 720p. If I remember rightly, I didn't notice much difference between 720p and 1080p. Down to optimizations of the game and obviously Intel's driver. Going RX550, had no problem. I think it's similar result. In fact, I think it's more or less identical to when it was on the 11400F. Obviously the RX6600 had no problem, and even the ultra settings we're still doing 100 frames. I mean, it didn't really struggle at all, really. As you expect it, not to struggle on this game. And I will be looking forward to the third version of this, of Shadow of War, whatever it will be called, because I do love a good fighting game, and this is a game where you can just jump on there and just go have a fight, no problem. The Witcher Wild Hunt. So we're just going to use the presets. So I've got low, medium, high, ultra, and on post-processing we'll lose the presets on there. So that's all we're going to do, and let's see how it runs. So this is 720p with the Intel IGP, integrated graphics. Don't do that bad, I can't complain. Doing 44 average, 1% low. I mean, the 1% low, so, and to be honest, you do notice it. There is some freezing, stuttering in this game, quite badly. At the end of the day, it was, I wouldn't say I was getting on my nerves, but I wasn't really playing it. I mean, if I was going to play it, you would have noticed it, and you'd have probably got the ump with it where it get freezing. Again, it can only go down into the Intel driver. Switch over to the RX550, now running at 1080p. The IGP, the frame rate was way too slow for 1080p, so that's why I'm not showing it. And I think he had render problems as well. So yeah, let's go in. Like I said, there was freezing in the game, regardless what graphic card resolution I tested out. There was stuttering and all sorts of stuff. So it can't just be down to Intel, it's got to be down to Windows or Alder Lake, the way it runs. So you've got the RX6600 now, 1080p, and you can see we're now up to 230 odd frames a second. 1% low again. It just shows you where the stuttering is. With the 1% low, it's got ding ding down really badly. Yeah, it's a game I want to play at this moment in time, not with Alder Lake or Windows 11. As I said, until I've done a Windows 10 test with Alder Lake, I can't say badly what's really causing the problems. But it's probably Alder Lake more than anything else, the way it runs. There's supposed to be a ray tracing update come to this game, not a third party add-on from the actual manufacturer. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be dark or light in this game. It seems to be too light to be dark, if you know what I mean, because you can see where you're going quite easily. And I'm pretty sure I've played it before. When it's dark, it's dark. Yeah, I think it's just looked like it's daylight, but there's a storm above, sort of thing. So yeah, it plays okay. I mean, we want to be what we on now, medium settings at 1080p. So I mean, it looks great. I mean, actually, I do love the game. I think the fighting side, I think it's a little bit difficult. It can be a little bit difficult. It's not as easy to play as obviously Shadow of War or Assassin's Creed. There's a little bit more to it in this, but once you get used to doing the magic in buffing yourself, it makes life a lot easier. High settings, now you can see the ground textures are now starting to really come through. And textures overall, I mean, it plays well. Well, it plays well normally, but on the Alder Lake, it's, as I said earlier, it's struggling. Here we seem to have the 1% low is now good. Yeah, where before it was really bad. So that's what I can't understand. I'm pretty sure the way Alder Lake with its E-cores, you're running, 1 minute they work, next minute they don't, and I think that's what's causing the stuttering. It's like on, off, on, off. I don't know. There's definitely something wrong the way Alder Lake works, and I don't know how long it's going to take them to actually fix the problem in Windows or the BIOSes. I don't know. So now we're in Ultra. I don't think there's been a much difference between Ultra and High. I'm not really looked, but I don't think there's that much difference at all, really. I mean, when they bring in the RX ray tracing in, there'll obviously be quite a bit of difference. But otherwise, it's playing well, can't complain. What we're doing, 100 odd frames a second, 89, 1% low. It's a pity it's dark at this moment in time, or something like that. It's nice if the sun was out, but I don't know when the sun's coming out. No idea. Okay, let's look at the chart breakdown. As I said earlier, the Intel RGPs. I mean, it ran alright, 44 frames, but it did have that massive stuttering drop. Mind you, we had that on the R6600 as well. In certain occasions, it just freezes or stutters, and it just goes and comes. Not a lot we can do about it, but it wouldn't play at 1080p. The frame rate was too low. So yeah, so the RX550, it was okay. Now, considering the RX550 and the 720 in some games have been very close, this is just one game we just didn't want to play well with at 1080p. So we get to the RX6600, low presets. Well, it obviously flies up to 230 odd frames, but then it had that, as I said, the stutterings, 1% low down to 8 frames. Don't ask why. Well, it's down to Alder Lake. I'm pretty 99% it's down the way Alder Lake's E-cores are coming on and off. But then it seems where we've been running the game for a while, it seems to disappear, the stuttering. And as we go up, we're getting 100 odd frames a second at Ultra, and we're in the 80s of the 1% low. So it wasn't always there, but when it was there, it was certainly noticeable. Okay, let's move on to the last game, which is Warhammer. Okay, Total War, Warhammer 2. We'll be updating this to Warhammer 3 soon. Intel's RGP, 720p settings. We're on the low settings as well. It does okay. It's in the 40s, 1% low at the 20s. So it's playable. So can't complain too much there. Okay, just want to know where I get the settings from. On the front screen where you click your resolution, you've got a drop down tab, low, medium, high, ultra. That's where the settings come from. So now we're on the RGB again, on medium settings. And you can see, okay, we're pushing it to the limits. Bigger armies. But we are on the 20 frame rates in the 1% low. Some was our original, didn't do a low or medium settings on the RX550, but we're on the high settings now, still at 720p, and you can see we are still got a better frame rate than Intel's integrated graphics. So we're doing well here. I mean, it looks well, good in 720p, I have to say. Now the actual map itself might be a bit blurry, but the actual 3D map is pretty good, worth playing on. Just for hell of it, we are with the 6600 at 720p. And you can see we've got extremely good frame rates, 187, 125 on the 1% low. Like I said, the graphics still look good, runs well. It's not a major problem at all with this game. We switch to 1080p high settings. You see at the end of the day it's slightly sharper, but obviously the frame rate is now dropped. Doing an average 115, 80 with a 1% low. 1080p ultra, you see the armies are now large scale. I think it's what, I can't remember now, I think it's 5,000 now, army size, something like that. So yeah, we're doing what, an average 80s and a 1% low in the 70s, so it plays extremely well on the RX6600. I mean, you could probably push 1440p. If I didn't have a monitor, I could show you, but I don't have a 1440p monitor spare, so I can't actually ever do a test run. It's a bit difficult. So yeah, no problem. So let's take a last look at Intel's IGP on the Windows 11. So yeah, we did what, 41 frames and 23 frames on the 1% low, on low settings, and on medium we did 30-21. So I mean, it played okay. There was no freezing that I noticed or stuttering, which is good. So it's one of these games that will work. Okay, the RX550 went to high settings and still played. Again, I should have done a test where it was actually on medium settings. I'm not quite sure why I didn't do one. Pass on that one. The RX6600, obviously, no problem at all. And as always, we get to the end. Ultra settings. Again, 83 frames, 65 on the 1% low. No problem at all. No freezing, no stuttering. And I don't think there was no sound problems either in this game. So again, it's one of the games that worked fine. So let's get to the conclusion and say what worked, what didn't work, and is it really worth buying the Alder Lake 12600K?
Okay, we're back with the conclusion. Alder Lake. It runs, but not correctly, which is awkward. I mean, I will say now, before we get to the end, if it was me, if I read my review and everyone else's review, I would not buy the system because it's not working correctly. It's as simple as that. And it's like, well, what's the point of spending basically £600 upwards and it don't work? Now the games I've got on here, they're not old. Some of them are quite newish. And are not working. Now it seems to be, well, the games I've got in here are UBI soft or Ubisoft problem with their DRM, but I don't think it's all down to the DRM. I think there's a few other faults going on with the system. So Far Cry 6, when we was running the RX6600, it was getting stuck at 60 frames a second. I lowered the resolution, I showed you on the thing, lowered it, changed settings, made sure VSync wasn't on. Doesn't matter what I'd done, it got stuck at 60 frames a second. I went over to my other system to check straight away. I thought, what was going on here? Is this an update coming out and it's caused problems? Now, okay, the other system was a Ryzen with an NVIDIA 3080. Now, regardless, if it got stuck at 60 frames, it would have got stuck at 60 frames. Had no problem running that on Windows 10. So, I don't know if that's down to an AMD problem, or Windows 11, or it's causing a problem with Alder. I don't know. Whatever it is, it wasn't working. Now we know we should be doing, because when we done a Windows 10 test a few weeks ago, we should have been well over the 100 frames a second testing. So being stuck at 60 frames was not happy. Okay, when I tested the RGP, the 770 for Windows, when I tested the built-in benchmark, it wouldn't run. It just basically gobbledygook on the screen, like your GPU's just exploded into whatever. It was literally nothing to look at. So there's obviously a driver error there. Division 2, basically just straight away from start, black screen, froze Windows, and you had to restart your computer from scratch to get out the problem. Again, that's probably a DRM problem, so we're not running. End of story. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now this was a funny one. It'd rather run, or it didn't run, or when it did run, it crashed within 1 or 2 minutes. So it was us. It crashed. It had too many problems for me to actually benchmark it. So again, that may be a DRM kicking in saying you ain't playing this game. I don't know. I know it was on the original list from Intel saying it doesn't work. So, and that was 3 weeks ago, well, when it came out, and they've not fixed it yet. So, a pain. Now the other odd things were TimeSpy, PCmark 10. And no graphs at the end. Now we always get the graphs, tells you what the frame rate is per section as it's running. The temperature, clock speeds and things like that. It just didn't show, what wasn't there. Even when I turned the thing on and off, it just didn't show charts. And the other thing, it does come up in a box, which it recommends wise and no data, which, okay, I can understand that because they probably haven't had enough people giving benchmarks in to say how good it is. Might be saying that, they have probably sold a lot. I would have thought they might have some sort of benchmark reference to go by now. So again, yeah, that's not working properly. CSGO. Now, the game's been around donkey's years. It's updated regular as clockwork. Now you'd think, being old, it'd work no problem out of the box. When we tried Intel's RGP, a lot of things won't render. So like when we were doing the castle walls won't render, they're just all black. I mean, the ground was there, it's just objects like the trees, whatever, just didn't show, it was black. And regardless of what graphic card I was testing, it had these micro freezes. Yeah, you just go and you freeze. It's like enough to get on your nerves. Now the higher, the faster the card you got, it went away. But even when we looked at the RGP or the 550, now they were still doing playable frame rates, but the micro freezes were there a lot, and to me it was not playable. Being a competitive game, you would not want to play it. End of story. So again, I'll just keep way off playing CSGO. What else? Oh, MSI Afterburner. Did you notice that the memory come out funny? It'll tell you what the memory is on the left, because usually what it says, it tells you how much memory you got and how much is being used, and the numbers don't match up to what I've actually got. It's like, well, what's going on there? Didn't make sense. Now I noticed this version of MSI Afterburner and the review tuner I've got installed was designed for Alder Lake, but then we brought out a new version the other day. Well, I was already done after tests, so I was like, well, I can't change now. They would have brought out another version. But I have noticed that they've got a lot of features added now to do with memory, video memory, system memory, and well, other things in there. So it's possibly that the memory is being read incorrectly on Afterburner. I think the frame rates were still okay, because when we done the built-in benchmarks, the frame rates come out similar. So not too bad there. Okay, every game I run, now this may be an AMD driver fault on the Windows 11 side, because it was mainly affecting them. The sound crackles, especially on the RX550. In the menus, when it's playing the background music, it just crackled constantly. Ding, 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 crack, 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 crack. Yeah. Oh, you just say, oh, blah, blah, blah. But when I went into the game to actually play it, any game, sound was fine. So it's like, okay, is it a driver fault, or is it where Alder Lake, is it cores not spinning up enough to run the sound? Because at the end of the day, the E-cores were supposed to do the background. It's like, were the E-cores not working fast enough to do the sound? And when you went into the game, the performance cores turned on, and then the sound fixed itself. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a driver fault or it's an Alder Lake bug. Yeah. Okay, so now let's get on to a bit of hardware. CPU coolers. Now, if I was going to buy Alder Lake, if I was anybody now, see if you get the cooler first. Yeah, they're very rare, and for 1700 they're even rarer. Okay, that's me done. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some good insight into buying Alder Lake and if you should buy it or should you not buy it. That's about it really. Yeah. Okay, if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe and please comment below, and if you've got Alder Lake, let me know what you think of it. So, and go from there.